everybody. I'm Joe Machado. I have this thing I like to start on time. It drives people crazy sometimes. Some people like it. So we're just a little bit over. And it's maybe more of an intimate thing tonight compared to some of the others, but that's okay because some of those have been the best ones. This is the fifth episode of TLDR. Too long, didn't read. And I'm here with my co-host Chris Wise, who I probably taking a bathroom break after his drive before we start, but he's here and he'll be here. And this started probably a year ago, just about a year ago, a conversation Chris and I were having at an event, a book launch, and the concept was we both knew a lot of poets who had written long, including ourselves. Let's face it, there's a certain selfish element to this, but who like to write occasionally pieces that are just long, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes long. And when you go to an open mic, you can't spend, it's too long. People don't like it. It slows down the whole thing. You got to have like a 3-minute thing, right? And even when you're the feature poet, you don't want to blow it all on one piece, right? So you kind of do all your best poems, right? So you just never read these things. And it's like, well, what if we created a format that's what it was? So we could have, 3 poets, maybe sometimes 4 poets come, and each can read one poem that's very long. And, put in all the bells and whistles, sell it, and try. The experiment was, are we able to hold an audience's attention for those long pieces, or do they kind of drift off? And honestly, we didn't know. But now this is our 5th one, and they've been awesome. And yeah, we have, I'd say, curated the poets and really selected people who, good writers and good presenters, and that we're very confident, and they've been super amazing. So I'm delighted that we have 3 great poets for tonight, 2 of whom were sort of either discovered or rediscovered at the open mic after the TLDR 2 times ago. So that is, I think, an amazing dynamic. So after each poet will do one piece, one long piece. That's the way we do it. And after each one, we'll have a little bit of questions and discussions and interaction for as much as there's energy to do that, and then we'll go on to the next one. Then we'll take a short break. Everyone will have a glass of wine or something, and tip the waiter or waitress, because we really appreciate Indies for being so supportive of doing this, and they really want to give them a hand. We've got Tyler at the bar, and Brandon, I think, is still there. So be generous about that, because that helps us come back. And that's all I really wanted to say. And I want to introduce my amazing co-host, who I really enjoy working with all the time, and we have a hell of a good time, the inimicable Chris Wise.
Yeah, Joseph's been wonderful to work with. Kind of like what he said, we come up with this idea because, with the open mics, you get 3 poems or 5 minutes and you're out. But some of us write longer things, and we want to hear longer things. One of the things about this series that I've been so surprised with, and what has been, I think, so cool, and the way I describe it is kind of in this TikTok age where everything's so quick, it really is nice to be able to sit with a poet and hear kind of the long form, and let them really get some traction and talk. Whereas, and what's different than a feature in this is usually with a feature, I do this piece, I move back, I come back, I do another piece, and then rinse and repeat. But this is you're there with them. And it's got a different vibe and a different feel, and I really hope you enjoy it. And I brought this up to Joseph a while back, and he was like, let's make this happen. And he really has been amazing. So thank you, Joseph. Chuck Wimble's been a friend of mine and a person I love his work and I love reading with, and so it's my honor to be able to introduce him, and here's some of his bios. He says it all started at a workshop at the University of Montana in about 1986. The classic circle of chairs. The students were writing about which parent they liked best, and they got criticism and encouragement, and then they had, guest poets that were famous and so on. And Chuck is currently exploring the intersection of poetry, family lore, and the beauty of unreliable memory. It's kind of the whole memoir concept in it. And there's the truth and there's the way you tell the story, because the way you felt, and you can actually get to a deeper truth that way, which is cool. His latest projects include using audience participation, so probably get ready, and collaborating with his mother on a series of writing projects. That's sweet, man. You got a big heart. Love you, man. So, let's see. I'm browsing. Chuck lives in Houston, Texas, with his wife and the artist and poet Mary Wimple. So, all right, Chuck, and don't get in a sword fight with him because he will kill you. He's a great with the foil. All right, thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Chris. We appreciate it, Joe. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. The work with my mother was leaning into dementia and hallucination as she went through her journey with dementia. And that's not what we're going to talk about tonight, but maybe at a future reading on that. And Chris mentioned family lore, and I started to explore fragmented memoir and what really is reliable memory from different perspectives. And I started to focus on an early piece about the time that we would go. We were the city cousins. We'd go visit my country cousins on the ranch each summer, and there'd be wild stuff happening, as you well know, on the farm and the ranch. That was kind of shocking for some of us, but also brought different things into our life. And I was taking this class on what's called a wild form, and I'd worked out this really nice conventional small sonnet piece, 14 small sonnets. It had a nice arc, and the timeline was nice, and I was pretty happy with it. But it was wild forms, and I thought, well, that's not really very wild. What if we started to explore family memory and how it doesn't necessarily follow a timeline, or it comes in from different angles? And I started to explore it a little more, and I'm going to have you help me out with this piece tonight. We're going to use a little packet of playing cards. So I need 14 people to grab just enough. So hang tight. Which is why I haven't keep the lights up for this part. So what's on the back? These are the stanzas that were originally in a certain order. And the experiment is, can you take them, put them on playing cards, mix them up, randomly select them, and have a brand new piece every time you perform it? Because it's in a very different order now. The order you've picked is not an order that's been picked so far. Not always not an order, it's 14 possible, 14 cards, multiple options to pick them out, and also multiple voices that haven't read this before. So we're going to create an original performance and brand new piece of the poem Ajax. So we're going to go in order that you selected. And there's not a microphone out there, so you got to talk loud and project. Ready? Okay, here we go.
The pen was dismantled, and grass seed cast onto the soil. A bit of water piped in from the creek. Next summer, my cousins and I, and my brother and sister, spread our sleeping bags out onto the patch of lawn framed by tall ponderosa pines, and watched the night sky wheel across our view. And the grass was a bit uneven, and the air was clean, and the night was
Yes. Yeah.
And you've divided it into the 14 sections.
Yes. Yeah. So this is based. So a lot of the stuff in there is true. The chickens taking off with the toes and eating them, all that stuff. The guy falling off the tractor being eaten by his pigs, all that stuff happened out there. And there's ways to cast it with a little more family dynamic, I think, and it touches on relationships, especially with the widow and others. All that stuff is there, but it wasn't talked about much in the family. And so I wanted a way to enter into that in a little bit of a fantastical way, and fill in some of the gaps between just the lore of Tweed losing his toes and all this type of stuff, right? So I wanted to have a little more depth. The relationship with the brothers, which is something that was never talked about, but very, very evident. So I wanted to find a way to do that. As I mentioned, when I put it all together, it had a very nice arc, and it was fine, but I really like the idea of mixing it up and having it be communal, like we all did. Like if you're in a big family conversation, hopefully different people chime in at different times talking about family lore. So that's kind of the idea behind the audience participation part of it. Anything else? John. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, John. I didn't want to be the usual. Oh, the farm is a beautiful, innocent place, and everything is in balance, and everything is good, because it's not, right? It really isn't. And being able to talk about that though in a family setting is a little risky, because we don't like to disturb the family peace sometimes, right? So I wanted to find a way to do that in a way that was a bit fun and engaging and creative. And then the cards, when I was thinking about how to mix up the form, I do magic tricks as well too. I was shuffling a deck of cards. I thought, you know what, I bet I could put these in the back of a card, and then I could just shuffle it up and mix it up, and I could have a different one every time. And then I'm like, wow, what if I actually had the audience pick it randomly, and then it would truly be random, and it would be new voices each time, and experience that way as well too. So that's kind of what's behind it. Anything else? Yes.
What's your grandmother's favorite way to kill a chicken?
She was a classic traditionalist on that. You basically grab it and spin it. Yep. 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 That's the way to do it. Quick and easy, and it rarely goes wrong, as opposed to some of the other methods can maybe not go as well on that. So. Anything else? Sure. So I do, the folklore. Thank you, Chris. The folklore for family is a build out of. I typically like to work on mythology as a theme as well too. Chris alluded in the biography of the project with my mom and dementia and hallucination, which is also meant to find a way to deal with unreliable memory. And that project's been interesting because she was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. They give you a bunch of tests to kind of see where you're at. Many of you have gone through that with family members yet, but there's the classic one where you count back from a certain number back to a different number. There's a blank face of a clock, and you're supposed to draw a time. She hated that. She scribbled all over that. Really pissed off about that. And everyone's like, oh no, this is really bad. And then they got to the part where they tell you to name as many words as you can that start with a certain letter. So in 30 seconds, give me as many words as you can that start with the letter P. And she blew everyone away. They weren't able to keep up. And it's because my mom's favorite book was the dictionary when I was a kid. She would actually read the dictionary on the weekend, right? And she loved words. And so, man, she leaned into it. And it wasn't just simple words. It was amazing what she was coming up with. And I thought, it's really cool. And she'd passed away recently, but she's in Montana. I'm down here. I wanted to connect. And so I got a hold of her, and I said, hey, Mom, we're going to do a project together. We're going to take every letter of the alphabet. We'll do a couple a night. And you're going to give me like 5 to 7 words that start like with the letter A. And then I'll write a piece. And then within that piece, only words with the letter A will be your words, right? And same with B and C and D and E and F and G all the way through the alphabet. And part of it was a nice interaction amongst us for writing, and that allowed me to expand out, Chris, beyond the traditional poetry approach to, I did like a Farm and Ranch Report radio show. I did a advice column, stuff that she used to like. So it stretched me as a writer a bit in that. And when I went to visit her, my brother was there, and they were all really worried about some stuff. And I sat down. It was just her and I and my brother, and we started to go through the rest of the alphabet because I wanted to get those words pulled together before anything bad happened. And she loved it, and she had a great time, and she really perked up. And I got all the letters, and we got, and I would send her an individual letter for each one. It'd be an envelope, and it'd be whatever it was, crossword puzzle, poem, whatever it might be. And then she would get it, and then she would read it, and then we talk about it. And we got 10 of them done. And one's a play as well too, and the balance are going to be combined into a larger piece, which is going to really lean into her hallucinations. My family would freak out on the hallucinations, and I'm like leaning into it. It's like, whoa, tell me about this. Believe it or not, there was a pig in one of them, just like with Ajax, right? It's like, she's like, Mom, you're on the floor. What are you going like this? What are you doing? Oh, I'm trying to get those baby pigs, up there. Okay, well, you got them all. Yeah. Why is your sister riding the pig down the hallway? And my sister's not in the hallway, and there's no pig either. But my mom's seeing this pig going around. So it's like, let's talk about the pig. That's not where Ajax came from, but that's a different, part of the piece. And before she started to have her decline, whenever she would come out of anesthesia, she would always lean into me, and she would say, it really affected her in really interesting ways for several days. And she'd say, Chucky, I work for the CIA. And I'm like, really? She's like, yep. I've been working for the CIA ever since you were a baby. I've been on missions here and there. And so she was like, and my family was like, oh my gosh, losing their mind. I'm like, tell me about these missions, Mom. What's going on with this, right? And so I worked the CIA, and this final piece is going to be, was she a spy or not? I wouldn't put it past her, my mom. I really wouldn't put it past her. But it's going to be, was she there or not? Last time I saw her, started going a little long. First thing I said, I walked in the house, I'm like, Mom, how's it work with the CIA going? She's like, yeah, it's mostly admin work. I just don't get out in the field, much like I used to. And I looked at her, and I'm like, is she playing with me or not? So we had that kind of special bond. So I've been able to kind of grow into this new area of writing, which has been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. So, okay, very good. Anything else? Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
Isn't it fun when you host people and you look back at yourself and go, maybe I'm a boring ass writer, man. He's doing some pretty cool stuff. I don't know. All right, next up, I want to introduce Dr. Kim Corson. I'm so proud to have her here. She came to see John Reed, and a Gormanite, and she had mentioned that she hadn't read in such a long time, but when she read, she was to me she was a blow away, man. I really enjoyed her reading, the way she exceedingly visual, if I recall. I mean, the senses all in there. Beautiful nature stuff is what you were doing at the time, I think. And so I actually talked her into being here, and she came from Dallas. Where'd you come from before Dallas? She flew into Dallas from Chicago. Yeah, and then drove from Dallas to here to be here. I think that's pretty awesome. So yeah, there you go. And then not only that, she wrote something new that she's going to be sharing with everybody. And she hasn't done that in a very long time. And so please give her a massive hand. She's amazing, and you're going to love it. Kim Corson.
So new that it's old school spiral notebook. So sorry about that. All right. So my background is that I am a Gormanite. So my master's is in literature and creative writing. My PhD is in psychology, and I work as a coach with people who are going through any type of changes. And I use symbols when I work with them. So I call them talismans. It's like, what's your inner character of fear, or what is your inner talisman of fear? So there's always these themes that come up every week for some reason, and I meet with 25 clients a week, and there's there's always a theme that everyone's going through at the same time. I mean, everyone's going through a change, but there's always some sort of talisman or theme that connects. There's a pattern. And the one that's been coming up week after week recently is the idea of seasons. And the seasons are twofold. So one of the meaning of seasons is the idea that you live seasonally. So I have a lot of clients. I have clients everywhere. And especially my East Coast clients, they're preparing for winter. I mean, we get winter here, but, winter. They're preparing for that. They're ready to snuggle down. They're ready for that hibernation sort of thing. And then, as the spring comes, they want to start bursting with new life and just doing things. The summer is the busy era. But my Texas clients, they haven't really been living that way because our weather, what's the one thing about Texas weather? It changes every 5 seconds, right? So it's really hard to go into that rhythm, to go into that season. So we've been talking about that. But we've also been talking about seasons of life, the cycle, the seasonal cycles of change, and how change will hit. Like one day you're having your summer life where you're walking around eating your ice cream cone, the sun's high in the sky, everyone's shining, and the next minute something just starts, a leaf falls, right? A leaf in your life falls. And before you know it, they're all on the ground and the ice is here and it's winter and it's death, loss. And then we're always telling people, well, don't worry, after the loss, there's rebirth. And there is, but it's not always the easy rebirth. Like, it's not just like you wake up and boom, okay, yay, everything's good again. Spring is hard. You've got to push up through that hard ground to get the seed to plant, for the little plant, the sprout to come up, the nascent. I think there was something about a nascent sprout in here. So appropriate I got that card for your thing. But it's not easy to push up through that hard, cold ground, right? So the poems that I put together are about the seasons, and you will see these themes throughout my poetry. There are 4 seasons, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and we're starting with summer. Hushed sky dips into hues of violet and gold, drapes the horizon in majestic robes of light, and the setting sun casts a muted light, the crown of splendor on a house which stands upon a vast stretch of land and dreams. A wood-framed house, skeletal remains chipped and worn, its paint like lipstick washed away with time, yet the royal beauty shines, a constant surge of endurance and hope, undimmed by age, for majesty lives forever. Deep inside, concealed in dusty rooms, a haunting force of mischief and of fate feeds on certainty, shreds it with every bite. Its exhalations creep into the lungs of visitors, cling with steadfast might. My foot on the threshold. Already I feel its power, captivating my senses, filling my head with troubling visions. It drains my mouth of moisture, strips my lungs of breath, alters perception, like a psychedelic drug, drops me to a new plateau of reason. Suddenly, I see myself in a hallucinogenic mirror. Yellow sundress, daisied tresses, looped in curls of gold. Around my waist, arms of enhancement, the man whose hands give me a glimpse of the future. In a whirlwind, the music disappears. The force has left my body to pursue another soul. Still, dense, gooey droplets adhere to the lining of my lungs, making every breath a reminder of its power. Beside me stands my companion, quiet, still, voice hushed, his eyes wide with uncertainty of where to go from here. As the golden sky melts into night, the force stirs again. Autumn. crisp October air chills the flesh of all the guests, splashing a rosy blush across their cheeks. Haunting calliope music dances atop pinstripe tents, filling the air with a chaos of sound, numbing emaciated senses. Although in groups, each walks alone, trudges on, down sticky paths, roads paved with pretzels, popcorn, caramel. At length, delays the pilgrimage to the doors of the crowded funhouse, a temple of mirrors, reflections, painful myths. They stand before each curving glass, twisting and turning to see all sides of their distorted figures, gasping at Igor-like men, wincing at cellulite women. Illusions who leer right back at them, apparitions true to life. For the mirror doesn't lie, they think. They stand to view in hatred a truth chimed out by tinkling organ sounds. How they run, tumbling towards the exit, searching an outlet for their pain. They grasp the handrails, slip through the rolling barrel's vertical swirls of red and white. Their bodies, so disfigured in their minds, are slowly swallowed, drenched with tears, the smell of nausea electrified with fear. Those few with strength enough to shake the mirrors from their mind leap out of their sickness. Only they can make it out of the funhouse, back through the cold, dark night to the solid other side. Winter. Desire, unfamiliar, uncomfortable, weighs heavy in my chest as the plane circles overhead. I see the lake, vast, intimidating, a flawless blue unfurled like a bolt of fresh dyed fabric, the color of truth, imposing. It calms me, though I know not what's ahead. I sense the freshness in the air, the softness of the sand cool beneath me, his breath wrapped around me like a downy feather quilt. Melting into each other, we become one with the shore. Undertow pulls us into the blue uncertainty. I wonder, as I shift my thoughts to the crisp November air outside the plane, when will the ice come? Beautiful, solid, but collapsible under our weight. Hands too frozen to hold. Icy, callous wind rips us apart, severed without warning. The plane lands. I'm pushed ahead by arms of luggage, hurled through the exit with no chance of retreat. Gasping, I sink into a whirlwind of muffled voices, swallowed by the quicksand crowd. A hand reaches in to lift me from the chaos. Wind howls, indeed, but we huddle closer. Spring. We pause on the balcony, April sky for a moment windless. Conversation plunges into the depths of our chaos. Your midlife shakeup, a second adolescence no one understands, you think. You try to hide the changes, to reconcile skin that no longer fits, and perhaps wasn't yours to begin with. Once Jekyll, now Hyde. I'm in my bad wolf era. Not the beast, as much as the time traveler, who looks into the heart of the blue box, awakened to all of time and space. My scattered messages to self lead me to this precise moment, where pretense and illusions, vestiges of a false god, divide into dust. I've seen it in dreams. Empowered friends hide and wolf. Still, transformation comes at a cost. Things you cannot unsee. Selves you will never be again. We take in this knowing together. As if on cue, a gust of wind baptizes us in a shower of soft rain. How easy it seems, this new threshold. But the wind didn't come to play. It came for a street fight. Tossing tables, chairs, patio umbrellas. Once calm skies now swirling with debris and sideways rain. They all hate you, Hyde. Sneering slam of a table. You're nothing. No one. Glass shatters. Every dream recedes with your hairline. Golf ball hail pelts down. Worthless. And you, Wolf, what are you? Scientist or mystic? Expert or fraud? Vital? Huh, no. Invisible. Irrelevant. I saved a torrent of self-doubt for you. Electric vengeance fills the ochre sky. Stop. Breathe. I know this storm. Its vitriol stings and distills, rages and renews. A liquid phoenix rising from puddled ash into a perfect mess. Unrelenting, it swirls around us, stripping bare residue of what no longer serves. I smile. Will we be okay, you ask? Yes, because we've finally come home to ourselves.
Thank Dr. Kim Corson, please.
Hey, we usually do a Q&A, so I want to ask this. Now that you're writing again, what are some of the themes you want to explore?
Definitely, storms came up a lot in here. You know, nature is part of my thing. But the book that I actually am writing, and is sort of sitting in proposal limbo, is about storms. And so I really want to do a piece a little bit more on the storm. So that's definitely one of the parts that I'm going to.
You've lived a lot of life since the last piece. Beyond storms, what are some of the things you might like to tackle?
You had to ask me that. You know, one of the things I work with a lot with my clients, I actually did a summer series. It's a summer camp for women, is what it was called. And it was a summer series I work with symbols with clients, obviously, but it was using different goddesses and mythical beings as summer camp counselors. So it was a 6-week series, and Medusa takes us spelunking in a cave, and you know, just all these different types of goddesses that help us. Artemis teaches us archery and self-sovereignty, right? So it was really fun, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I would love to do some, like a 6-part piece on those different goddesses tied into how they can help us to transform, and the conversations they could have with us about transformation.
Maybe would you tell us a little bit about some of your adventures with your singing? And would you be willing to explore some of that in your poetry? Because those are some cool stories.
Yeah, so yes, I have a background in music. I was actually a musical theater. I changed my major 9 times, but I started as a musical theater major and an economics major. The economics because I had a full scholarship for economics, so I had to do that. But I did musical theater to sort of offset that, and then I found psychology and English, and well, after like 7 more things, and ended up with that, and then went on for my master's and then my PhD. But music has always been a part of my life, and I've been in a lot of different choruses, symphonic choruses. I actually just auditioned 3 days ago and made the Niles Metropolitan Chorus, so I'll be singing some foray stuff coming up pretty soon with that. But I also have sung backup for a couple of people, which I think is what you're alluding to. I sang backup for Barry Manilow, a dream come true. So I sang for him in Erie, Pennsylvania, and we had to audition for that, and so I made that, so that was really cool. The cool thing about Barry was that he would audition people in the towns that he was coming to, so he had local people get up and be his backup singers, so I got to do that. And then I was also a backup singer for Sister Sledge, Kim Sledge of Sister Sledge, this past summer, so I got to sing with her. She sang in the band shell in Central Park. So I got to be on the bandshell in Central Park singing with her, and a couple of other hip hop artists were there as well. So yeah, it was pretty neat. So I do, yes, I definitely do like to sing. And I don't know about exploring that with poetry. I've got to figure out how to do that. If anyone knows how to do that, please teach me. So yes. Oh, you.
A great way to include singing is to use it as a vocation.
Oh,
Think
interesting.
about Mimi's performance in Rent,
Oh
how
yeah.
she's telling that story, and then there's the leap of faith, and it's an accent piece.
Oh, that would be fun. I would have to have a lot more wine for that, but yes.
Maybe not that wine.
Any other questions? Yes.
You know, I grew up around Chicago,
I know.
and you certainly nailed the kind of weather that you get from season to season to season. And another thing I thought was extraordinary, that poem with the mirrors and the rolling barrel,
Mhm.
um, that was Riverview.
Mhm.
Did you know Riverview before it closed?
Yeah, I did. Well, I lived in Chicago 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and so everyone talked about Riverview. So
It's a
yeah.
big amusement park in the city of Chicago, and it was, I treated it kind of like Jerusalem.
Yeah.
When I was a kid living way out in the suburbs in Aurora, it was just heaven on earth.
Yeah.
And that was Aladdin's castle.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I was trying to do that iconic fun house sort of feel with that piece. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
All right, we've got two very different I think amazing pieces, and now we've got our third poet, and I'm really excited to introduce our next poet, another person who was on the open mic the last time we did TLDR here. And we said, we got to get this guy, Jim Boone, who has been doing poetry for a very long time. Started it out in McKinney, Texas. I don't know exactly when, but he came to Galveston Island, I think started doing poetry in 2007. And I've never come across him until we met here at this TLDR series, and we loved what he did, and I talked to him a little bit about it, and he was very clear what he wanted to do, which was a kind of a tribute to Ginsberg's Howl, and he had me at Howl because I mean that's really what got me into poetry personally. So as soon as he said that, I'm like, yeah, man, you got to be here. And then he's working with Paulo Castillo, who I work with, and has been doing unbelievable music for some of my poetry for a while, and they've put something together that I think is going to be really special. And Jim is also looking forward to do this. His 89th birthday will be in March, so we're going to have him back for that. And we are just excited to have Jim and Paulo on the stage. Come on.
At the end, if you ask me a question and I can't hear you, it's because these are 89 years old.
You sure that's not selective hearing?
Good for you. When we were talking about if I had anything that I could do for this extended, I said I only have one poem. Everything that I write is usually one page, maybe two, but this one that I did, I was just always fascinated with the fact that Allen Ginsberg had written a poem that so many books were written about it, the process, and someone for a birthday present gave me a first edition book about him and his poem, and so I said, okay, this has got to be it. So here we go. Allen Ginsberg was a 1950s poet whose most famous poem got him thrown in jail for reading it in public. The 1950s were not as fabulous as advertisers loved to tag them. When he visited his most revered idol, Carl Solomon, in an insane asylum, he couldn't wait to get away and write. The poem, Howl, defined the beat generation of New York poets. Much later, with James Franco as the Howl writing Ginsberg on film, that had this senior poet all revved up once again. Was it the movie or the star that took me out of Idol? The whole package. Because I could close my eyes and see awards, rewards, a boon to decades of history. This is where I write all those words that are unacceptable for print. So don't use them, even if it is about those fucking asshole son of a bitches who are still waving the hate fear flag and spouting idiocy. Ginsberg began. Don't say it, don't post it, don't write it down. Lock up a poet in an asylum and poetry will happen. Ginsberg saw the best minds of his generation destroyed by madness, looking for an angry fix. I saw the best minds of my generation shot, killed for political deranged treasons of unsound minds. Allen looked into a supernatural darkness floating across the tops of cities, contemplating jazz. I looked beyond the limits of my hometown, away from the quiet abuse of those sissy boy tags, far from the institutions of lower learning, into the U.S. Army for total male acceptance. New York, New York, to meet many a you at the World's Fair in 1964 at a time of city government decisions to hide those queer people from the tourist by closing gay bars. So to evolve, I eventually had to beat it back to Texas, take off my Bible belt, and survive a suicide attempt, and make tracks to Houston, where Father Terrell told me I would find many more like me, like him. Ginsberg howled about New Yorkers cowered in unshapen haven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets, and listening to the terror through the wall, who busted, who, who got busted in their pubic beards, returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York, who ate fire in paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley Death or purgatoried their torsos night after night. I joined the party in Houston in an old plantation on West Gray, all decked out for later one on one. Meantime, at the Galleon, where we danced, schmoozed, and cruised to the music, in summer we went to the Galveston beaches, but got sweatier as we danced on the flashing decks at the Kontiki, high on pot, magic mushrooms, and life unleashed by the sexual revolution, Woodstock, and resistance. Ginsburg howled on about those done in minds who jumped into limousines with the Chinamen of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter midnight streetlight small town rain, who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston seeking jazz or sex or soup. Following the brilliant Spaniard Carl Solomon to converse about America and eternity, who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving behind nothing but the shadows of dungarees and the lava and ash of poetry. Our thought processes were put on hold on by dictations of sexual ballyhoo after hours from discoing, area motor cruising, tea room tangos, also known as making the scene and too damn good to be mean. Alan kept tapping those historic typewriter keys and howling about blown minds that created great suicide drama on the apartment cliff banks of the Hudson under the wartime blue floodlights of the moon, and their heads shall be crowned with laurel in oblivion. I kept doing my dead level best to expire, to find more than I could take, somewhere between sundown and eternity. That never happened, obviously. In the late 60s and in the 70s, mayhem choked drama into its dust as Vietnam went on, and young life of deceased and survivor ended. The howling minds journeyed to Denver, died in Denver, came back to Denver, and waited in vain for heroes who fell on their knees in hopeless cathedrals, praying for each other's salvation, who retired to Mexico to cultivate a habit, or Rocky Mount to tender Buddha, or Tangiers for boys, or Southern Pacific to the Black Locomotive or Harvard, to Woodlawn, to the Daisy Chain or Grave. A decade after Allen Ginsberg let out his howl, the daisy chainers were glorious in youthful skin, future tacky in long hair, equipment spotlighting bell bottoms, and sensually soft second skin shirts. As the sexual revolution became more about sex and less about war, more about rights and learning to dodge the bullets of wingers who couldn't get it off the ground, Allen Ginsberg dedicated his howl in 1955, the year I graduated from Old Boyd High School in McKinney, Texas. Dedicated it to Carl Solomon, whom he met in Rockland in that asylum. Carl Solomon, I'm with you in Rockland, where you're madder than I am, where you laugh at the invisible humor, where the faculties of the skull no longer admit the worms of the senses, where you scream in a straitjacket that you're losing the game of the actual ping pong of the abyss. I'm with you in Rockland, where you bang on the catatonic piano. The soul is innocent and immortal, and it should never die ungodly. In an armed madhouse, where 50 more shocks will never return your soul to its body again. From its pilgrimage to a cross in the void. I believe nothing that they said or say. Everything that I wove into this tapestry of words and actions, witnessed in everyday musings of the senses, bowing down to Eros, dropping to my knees in daylight and darkness, from silence and whispers, seeking nutrition. Allen was with Carl Solomon in Rockland, where in my dreams you walked dripping from a sea journey on the highway across America to tears in the door of my cottage in the western night. I am with the dearly departed AIDS victims, whose destiny it was to make a resounding statement to future generations and present day bigotry. You people, those people, are mindless tags put forth by a mental stillness that shouts out, no people are created equal. In God we do not, yes we do, trust only in what they interpret the Master's words to mean. No, only in what my muse shows me is true. The good people do not want to hear about the perverts who were mounted by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy, who hiccuped endlessly trying to giggle, but wound up with a sob behind a partition in a Turkish bath where the blonde and naked angel came to pierce them with his sword. Then a bunch of drag queens and gay bar patrons fought back against police brutality at Stonewall in the New York Village in historic 1969. Once again, a generation hoisted the banner for equality, and the battles for human rights continue in one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For all people, for all. Amazing grace. Oh, for all.
Stay there, Joe. Let me ask the questions. All right, I'm going to start because I'm just such a Ginsberg fan, and that you brought so much back. Maybe not everybody here remembers, but I mean, you went back and forth, right, between Ginsberg's lines and your lines, and obviously his experience, but your experience quite some time ago, right?
Yeah, oh yes.
As a gay person in a different environment. So, and that's really striking, I think, to some people. It certainly, hits me in retrospect. And how did you come up with this back and forth dynamic?
Well, for one thing, people are always telling me stories about the bad times they had coming out and letting people know about their sexuality. And I said, well, I never had that. As soon as I learned to talk, I started letting people know what was going on up here and in here. And just like Paula and I were talking about that when we were doing this, and he said, "Well, I had a gay brother and a gay sister," and they said at some point, "Well, I like boys. Well, I like girls." And he said, "Oh, cool, okay." Well, it wasn't like that in the 40s and 50s when I was growing up, but anytime when I did this, I was so interested in the fact that Allen Ginsberg, number one, was gay, and I heard him read this in Houston in 1968.
Ooh.
That's how I got to know about it, and then I started researching it, and then when I got this book about it that I gave to another poet a few years ago, but yeah, it. The other thing is that most people say when I'm doing poetry readings and things, they say most of your poetry is about things that I think about, and you don't do a whole lot about your sexuality. And I said, well, number one, I was so determined that nobody was going to tell me that what was going on inside here was not right, because I knew it was. I knew that this was me. So I knew that also there had to be more to life than who you were going to have sex with next. So I, I started writing about anything that came to mind. And as a result, I don't have a whole lot. Let's put it this way, I was doing research and I didn't have time to write. But now I'm thrilled that you have a place for me to do this because this is the first time I've ever read this. Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you one more question, and then I'll let other people. But I kind of know the answer. But working with Paolo, how did that work? How did you guys come up with this? And you might want to say
An
something.
absolute dream. I had worked with a couple of musicians in the '90s in Dallas, and after I saw you working with him, I thought, I hope I get a chance to do this. And as soon as I gave Paulo the copy of this, I said, "Okay, now you're in charge. You're the director. You are the musician. You tell me what to do and when to do it." And it's been absolutely wonderful for me. Got any questions for Paulo?
Oh, sure.
Well, Paolo, you never read Hal before this. I know because we talked about it.
Right. So when he
So
handed
how did
me,
you react to the whole thing? Yeah.
so when he told me about this project, he said, "Okay, this is about Howl," and I was like, "Okay, well, what is this?" And then he was like, "Okay, well, who's Allen Ginsberg?" But we live in a day and age where about 2 hours, 3 hours worth of research on Google and YouTube, you can get yourself caught up really quick.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh, this is groundbreaking!" Like the poem, and it's groundbreaking because it shatters a ceiling that I didn't even know needed to be shattered. It's about like free rights and free speech, and about gays too, and putting that out there for everybody to see. And it hit home with me because he said, as he mentioned, I have a gay brother and a gay sister, and I was like, well, that doesn't really bother me. I'm, an ally, and let's all be cool with everyone being cool, right? He said there's more to life than just who you're gonna be with next. So I was all over it. And so then when he presented me this, like you picked up, there's snippets of the poem that is Howell, the original Allen Ginsberg, and there's snippets of him. So for me, that was a really easy choice. I was like, oh, okay, well then he will be the happy, joyous, bouncy theme or rhythm, what have you, and Hal will be the kind of stark, darker one. And hopefully, I was able to portray when each one was which, right? Like, okay, this is the dark side. This is him talking about. This is Alan talking about his experiences and death and what have you. And then I'm a guy who's discovering his sexuality. And so it was really nice. It was really fun.
Came together super well.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's thank Jim Boone. Thanks, Jim. That was wonderful. That was really good. I didn't know that was the first time you ever read it.
You didn't know what?
That was the first time you'd ever read it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what TLDR's for. All right. Okay. So that concludes our three feature poets. So I definitely want to thank each of them for putting out an amazing performance. I want to thank Indies for being our hosts. So be good to Tyler and Brandon. And we're going to take a short break. You can talk and let's do an open mic. There's a paper there for the open mic. I think we got 4 or 5 signed up now. So that's great. We're going to try to do like one poem each because I don't want the open mic part to go on too long for this. It's really focusing on the features, but it's fun to do a little bit after because that's how we discover future poets for our TLDR, it seems. So that works out really well. So yeah, take a few minutes and we'll come back presently. Don't forget to sign up. Okay, before people leave, we are going to begin the open mic part of the TLDR number 5. Um, I just want to thank the poets once again because I'm really happy with how TLDR has evolved this year, and I'm really enthusiastic about continuing it in the future because it's creating some stuff like Jim never read that poem before, and Kim never read that poem before as it is, so and probably never would. So I think that's fantastic. So not to go on about that too much, let us begin the open mic. We only have 4 poets that have signed up. If anybody else wants to, we can, but that might be all we have. So we are going to start off, not necessarily in the order of sign up, because let's start with my co-host. I think we want to hear a poem from the great Chris Wise.
Initiate secondhand embarrassment in 3, 2, and. Yeah, it's gonna be bad. Hey, I'm proud to share this poem because I don't often read one that I just wrote, and I did just finish this, and I think it's kind of cool. And I'd like to give you a quick backstory, if I may. The poem's called 49 Days, and let's see here. I tried to stitch together indigenous medicine, cosmography, science, mythology, and we'll see how it goes, okay? So it's called 49 Days. It's in 7 stanzas of 7, which 7 times 7, I can't do that. But anyways, the poem's called 49 Days. So 49 days, the Buddhists say, of smoke and incense for a spirit to close the distance between matter and life. 49 days for the pineal to form. It's this little organ down in here. 49 more for it to sink from the crown to the middle of our brain. 49 more for the sex of the child to be determined. In reptiles, the pineal stays skull top, a heaven-facing eye that peers through bone and scale, oriented towards the heat-giving light. In us, it sinks inward, suspended in a sea of dreams and electricity. We close our eyes to pray so that we may see from the dark. The pineal, pine cone, pineal. A reptilian seed with scales that spiral like gyres of history and mythos, like galaxies. Dimethyltryptamine, DMT, a naturally occurring hallucinogen found in plants and the mammalian brain, whispers magic to wake it in its gray sarcophagus, rubbing sand from the eye of Horus, to gaze from the pyramid top like an antenna that sees realities in kaleidoscopic hypergeometry, between dream, prophecy, and hallucination. No wonder the ancients built such pyramids for this. Pine cones know to open after the forest burns. The pineal is our inner ember, our prism that splits living white starlight against the cosmic jeweler's velvet to prove the body is a place of quiet. We call space empty only because we miss the matter. Matter. Molecules in solid, liquid, gas, or plasma. But what's the matter? It doesn't matter. The answer is the journey, which is living in the now. We are all the silver surfer riding seconds, flowing like lava from the clock, from the furthest star to our sun to the pineal. We exist inside the polytexahedron, the pentacle, the Verushian man, the Star of David. Each image is an attempt to blueprint the shape of consciousness. No wonder the acacia was burning when Moses wrote the law. Acacia is heavy with DMT. The same fire that opens the pine cone in the forest flames refreshes what we have lost, forgotten, or overlooked. The light, the fire, the firelight birth the trees that make the sound when the trees fall in the woods. The universe registers this life, all life, and absorbs it back into the cosmic carnival of all that waits in space. The softly sounding gong is the shimmering hum, vibrating through the weft and weave of all matter, like mycelium, demonstrating Om. All is one. Now I understand why the ancients tracked the stars. How could they not, if they would know anything of existence? I was wearing my beret, eating a baguette, just thinking something. No. All right, where's the list? Damn, this is a long list. 4 people? Just kidding. I know, only 3 left. It's like Santa's list. Santa's good list is like, well, I'll be back before midnight. All right, first up, my friend and somebody I greatly admire, John Gorman.
The first part of my act is, will I be able to get up these stairs? With the help of my 88-year-old brother. It has been done. Okay, this poem is called Red Pontiac Convertible. And it comes from the first trip I took to the West. You know, the first time I got that part of continental sweep into my imagination. It was wonderful. Um, even in Iowa, the light was bigger, and the corn, I'd seen corn all my life, pulsed with some Iowan Platonic mystery plasm. What corn would be if Sandro Botticelli were the chief chemist at DeKalb Associated Growers, Jack and John and Mary and a Pontiac. And this was only the overture. Omaha, a bunch of blocky, misted over skyscrapers north of the road, but the Platte was westernness. We were riding on Jack's luck. God knows what, if anything, they'd have given me at AAA American Drive-Away on the south side of Chicago, but Jack was magic. So handsome and so wild. Warned away from him, I'll be glad I paid no attention. The Platte, wandering all lakey on its unprecedented Great Plains flatnesses, Jack and John and Mary, at 22, vitamin-enriched middle-class spawn of middle-class Midwestern colleges, we were as gods to the kids of Grand Island, Kearney, sexy and mysterious in our low-slung convertible. Mary's folk song long hair tied back in a bandana, California style. Darkness. Too bad it ever got dark and nobody could see us. We rolled through Wyoming as if Interstate 80 had appeared by fiat before us, and Wyoming was opening before the primal sentient masters. To Salt Lake, kind of a snag, actually. There was no second car for the coast. Never would be, capitalist liars. But we laid out for a few hours more in the red Pontiac, despite the drive-away guy's promise of police. Bobbed in the end of all life, life-giving water, you really can't sink. Jack took a picture of Mary and me on the beach. I've still got it. She's lovely and mysterious. I'm none too bad myself. Lean and alert, maybe a little dangerous if you cross me, though the drive-away guy didn't seem concerned. All this was a beginning. We were learning to be young again after premature maturities. We were at play. I picked up a piece of the Wasatch, pink rock. It's in a box somewhere. I'll find it when I'm old. Maybe I'll be buried with it. This was also the start of tangles, real life smudge-laden, self-weaving basket of snares. Jack would be dead in 5 years. Mary would begin to keep to herself, aloof, a bit perhaps like her patron saint, a mother of sorrows. At the heart of the basket of snares lie a few hidden joys. This is only one of them, but pink rock or no, I will, in some way, be buried with the 3-day dawn of that ride with my friends, be buried in the pink convertible. Hey, I get to do one more. Well, if I can find page 14, we're in business. Talk about not knowing what 7 times 7 is. Okay, the homeboy, in spite of himself, there's an epigraph, a line from the poet John Ronan, who was my friend in high school. He and I were the only 2 people in our class who scored higher on verbal than mathematics in the SATs. He's a poet who lives in Gloucester, Massachusetts now. The dream was leaving, John Ronan. The edge of that town I lived in, a fenced field of smashed cars, a shack to sell their parts, the screen of a drive-in movie, one huge tombstone by daylight, mangy with post-war houses scattered, built from kits and already crumbling, ditches and weeds, too much space around everything, a thin life, junk, a jumble. You die driving into it thinking, now I'll have to live here. Learning years later, you'd barely look back, but leaving years later, you'd barely look back, but you'd shudder, knowing that because you'd been here, something that blossomed in everyone else would wither in you. The dream was leaving. The dream was amnesia, then absolute recreation, a shimmering self, willed solid and potent and deft from the brilliant void of this horror, this displacement. All right. So why do the clover flowers and goldenrod make purple, green, golden bouquets around the crumpled grill of a 38 Buick? Why do the bottles of off-brand strawberry and lemon lime pop gleam in the stale depths of off-water among angel shapes of melting bacterial ice in the in the zinc cooler at the wooden bread store as if they were Jungian truths? Why do I believe it all again when the drive-in lights up in the late summer dark, full of popcorn and sleazy magic? Marco Polo apparently wanted to get out of Venice. Why am I back in Aurora, Illinois in the heat of this poem? People are rushing to.
Jim was gonna be there.
All right.
All right.
If I had $1 billion, I'd endow a railing.
A billion. Nice railing. Thank you, John. Hey, yeah, since we're doing that, I mean, yeah, let's. Everybody's gonna do two because we're short, and if the features want to do one, man, I'm down with it, man. So start thinking. I'm not going anywhere. I drove an hour to be here, man. Shit. Next up, put your hands together, please, for Rachel Copes. Come on.
How do y'all feel about science fiction? Aliens in Texas? That felt like a loaded statement. I probably should have thought it better. So these poems are part of a long time shelved project. I'm taking a break from my deep dive into H.P. Lovecraft, and I do the open mic at the Proletariat every third Thursday. If you want to get a taste of some of the H.P. Lovecraft poetry that I've been working on, and of course my Facebook page has a lot of it. At our Copes. Let me pull up what it is specifically, if I can. It's me on the phone with the scream guy in the background. Yeah, our Copes. And I have a lot of poetry on there. And a lot of the stuff I've been writing right now is pretty dark because of Halloween. And I have like really elaborate stories in my head about this one story in particular is the question of what would happen if aliens landed in the deep woods in Texas and they didn't really have a basis for comparison other than just what they could find immediately around them about the culture. And these aliens are slightly misguided and they take the WWE as gods. And so they write these stories about the fights from WWE in the prose of the Norse Eddas. And so that's leading into this poem in the foundational works of how the WWE became what it is today. The first ring, as told by the storytellers of the forest people in the grand tradition of the Ring sagas. In the beginning there was chaos, not the good kind found in pits and brawls, but the old kind of whispers and smoky halls, of backroom deals and belts passed in shadow. The gods of wrestling served a council once, a league bound not by honor but by chains. The old order, the NWA, and lo among them rose a warrior, bold and furious, a titan not of trickery, but of fists like anvils and a soul bound in fire. Bruno the Unbreakable, the strong man of destiny, the first champion forged by will, not by whispers. And opposite him, Buddy Rogers, the nature boy, all swagger and smile, crowned by the old order, but unproven in the eyes of the coming storm. They met in sacred combat, not in the pit, but in the moment between eras, where the ropes still swayed uncertain and the turnbuckles bore no legacy. The match was swift, a heartbeat, a prophecy. Bruno struck with the fury of the new age, and Rogers fell like an idol made of sand. And when the count reached 3, the old gods scattered, and the ring was made anew, not bound to the past, but forged in the moment of power. The first ring, a sacred circle, a new world for warriors, a lineage that would stretch from Bruno to the dead man to the final bell yet to come. And so the Worldwide Wrestling Federation was born, not as a company, but as a sacred realm where warriors would be tested, where faces and heels would shape fate, and where the stories of the forest people would begin. Thus ends the first ring, a tale not of business, but of battle, not of paperwork, but of prophecy. For all must enter the ring, but only the worthy shall rise from it. The sacred turnbuckle. As told by the storytellers of the forest people in the grand tradition of the ring sagas. After the first ring was formed and Bruno's hand was raised high, the warriors of the squared circle rejoiced, but the ring itself was still wild, unanchored and untamed. The ropes quivered with uncertainty and posts swayed in the winds of change, and the warriors, though strong, could not yet claim their destiny, for the ring was forged, but it had no anchor. The seer in a suit. Then came a man of vision, clad not in robes or armor, but in a suit and tie, strange garments for a prophet. He was young then, but his eyes burned with fire. Vincent McMahon. They called him mad. They laughed at his dream to take the ring from smoky halls and bingo halls, to carry it forward across the land and speak its gospel to millions. He was not a warrior, but he was a builder of gods, a forger of destiny, a man who could see the threads of the sacred circle stretching into the stars. The first battle of the South. And so he journeyed far to Texas, where the ring was doubted, where the halls were not yet filled and the believers were few. He set the ring, he called the warriors and began the fight. Not just in the ring, but in every voice that called him a fool. The crowd was small, the cheers were faint, but McMahon watched, and when the final bell rang, he stepped between the posts and took a single bolt from his pocket. The turnbuckle. With that bolt, he fastened the rope tight, unmoving, unbreakable. The sacred turnbuckle, not just a tool, but a symbol of vision, of structure, of the belief in what others could not see, and the warriors watching understood. The ring was no longer wandering. It had found its anchor, and from that moment forward, the ring stood firm, bound by will, by prophecy, and by the seer in a suit. The rise of the turnbuckle creed. The forest people tell their younglings, do not mock the quiet ones who wear no armor, for some build with stone and some with words, but few, very few, build with vision. And in every corner of the ring, where the ropes are tied and the stakes are driven, you will see his mark. The turnbuckle, sacred, eternal, unseen by many, but known by all. Thus ends the sacred turnbuckle, a tale not of combat, but of faith, foresight, and the laying of the first foundation, for the ring must be fought in, but first it must be built.
With McMahon, or you blended McMahon and Tolkien in such a way that it was like fucking genius. Like, I mean, that was crazy. The sacred turn with the Lord of the Rings, man. That was awesome. Like, talk about mythology. But the fact that you connected, I mean, that's genius, man. I really think that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. You connected these superheroes, together with Lord of the Rings, and you did it, and nobody expected that. Nobody's ever seen that before. That was super neat, man. It was cringe and awe-inspiring, all woven together in this beautiful freaking thing. It was awesome, man. Yeah, you did. You did. It was beautiful. I think you're probably like a high-level genius, man. That was fucking great. Thank you for that, man. That was so cool. I'm sorry, Joe. You got to follow that, man. You got a couple, man. Put your hands together for my friend and co-host, Joseph Machado.
Thank you, Chris. That was an awesome. But now, I'm coming back for you. All right, I got another poem for you. I'm tightening up the turnbuckle, and I'm coming. Okay. All right. All right. So, yeah, we got not Thanksgiving, Halloween, Samhain coming in 8 days. So I thought I might try to find something appropriate. Of course, ghosts. We talk about ghosts. We talk about the veil being thin between the living and the dead realms. And sometimes I think about there's a lot of ghosts in Galveston here on the island. And you look at ghosts, and they're always like Victorian, aren't they? They're always Victorian. And I thought to myself, people have been living in this world for 100,000 years. Why aren't there any ghosts from the Paleolithic era? And I thought to myself, what was the first ghost? What was the experience of being the first ghost among human beings? So this is called the first ghost. She could remember the beginning of the cave bear's attack, but was unable to summon its conclusion. She recalled the initial flood of fear, but not the ensuing tsunami of pain. Her name was a guttural vocalization unpronounceable by the modern larynx. She considered herself of a venerable age with a shamanic accumulation of knowledge long before the time of shamans arrived. She knew death. She knew death intimately. It surrounded her at every point in life, from predation, injury, childbirth. It arose from disease, poison, conflict, starvation, seldom old age, and never depression. Her own death, she was slow to recognize when it occurred. In its traumatic suddenness, though of this beast, its fierce lethality, she was well apprised. She lived in that cave a long time before she reasoned that her life had ended. She witnessed generations of her family, her clan, live, grow, struggle, and die. She watched in obligatory silence Her presence was sensed by some, but none could truly perceive her. Predators passed by unaware of her in the absence of scent. Having had spent her life largely gathering food, water, medicines, materials, and requiring none of this now, she would reenact familiar tasks as she pondered ways to fill her time. Why did she not cross over? I feel certain that you are asking me, over to what was the problem? A concept of afterlife was yet unknown to this still survival-focused primates. Or perhaps she was the first, the very first, to wrestle a glimpse of it with her hard-won wisdom, but not enough to manifest the divine destination. A portal preempted by the maul of Bear Claw. Dead, godless, but newly aware, she wandered among the living. Maybe eventually she completed the task to conceive her own paleo heaven. Or maybe she still crouches and waits to rouse the slumbering bats as night falls. Thank you very much. Okay, so here's a poem. I think it's kind of fun. A few years ago, I read, and it was kind of a project. I read Paradise Lost, if you know John Milton's, and it's a hell of a thing. I mean, it's a hell of a thing. It's amazing. And I was reading it on an airplane, and then I'm sitting on the airplane and it's delayed, and I'm reading I'm near the jet engine, on the wing, and it's got the sort of safety information on the jet engine, like don't put your hand in it and shit. So then I wrote this poem on the flight. It's called A Safety Label for Industrial Rotating Equipment, if composed by John Milton. And this is before AI. Be forewarned and informed of one solemn obligation be, that this debt to you shall yet remain well and truly paid, if you but deign to read and durst ignore these hazards that are herein full length explained. If some spark from you unbidden should emit in this place so vapor cursed, may in a trice unheeded set your mortal form ablaze, and unquenched shall render you a smoking corpse. Or, if at length extinguish whilst you live, may leave unhealed your scarred visage, an unholy thing so ghastly to perceive, that your glance will from this time be met with eyes averted, or tender smiles be spoiled, and children from your warm embrace recoil. Where sharpest blades begin to spin, you must refrain, though they may turn rapid as to a ghostly veil, yet deathly solid they remain. Should you be stricken in the least, you've much to fear. When the pain of being cleft in twain is yours to bear, or even when the wound is not so great, the merest gesture near the blade, devoid of care, may digit from your hand soon separate. More dangers still inhabit this device, wrought not from hands divine, but those of man. If I could list them, they would exceed the span that does unfold this diagram. Thank you. Are we finished? Yes. All right, we've got one more from Dr. Kim Corson.
This is a poem it is to write when you're uninspired. It's called Mistress Muse. And everything's falling. I sit quietly in the room waiting for you to enter in your lace and satin metaphors. With a seductive smile, you manipulate my lust, making me hunger for your power. Your dance flames me with passion. Your silky senses brush across my brain, grasping my hand, making it right, kissing my pen with verses. You rise above me. Your notions caress the links of my words, and with a bedspring kiss, you depart. And that's why I can answer your question about what's next.
Did you have a good time? Because I really did, man. I love hearing this. I love being around you guys. You're hilarious. You're weird. You're fucking so weird, man. But so am I. And it is a great kind of weird, and it is awesome, man. Thank you very much. Can I ask us to give ourselves a round of applause for being here for this, man? You're too broke, too tired, and you're too tired of it to come, but you did anyway. And thanks a lot, man. And so let's mingle and have a good time. I appreciate it.